You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Shemish, Israel, 5785, 2024. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Chayei Sarah. And in our Parsha, we have the death, the great loss of two great tzaddikim, a tzaddik and a tzaddikah. Sarah Imenu passes away at the beginning of our Parsha. Avraham Avinu passes away towards the end of our Parsha. And in talking about the death of tzaddikim, there's a beautiful medrash quoting psukim from Tehillim and also giving us a bunch of stories about the death of tzaddikim in later times. There's an important discussion which addresses a certain angst that the human being has. Somebody who's trying to do the will of Hashem, somebody who's trying to be spiritual in a very non-spiritual world, trying to do God's will in a world which very much defies Hashem's will. The Medrash tells us like this, and I'd like to read to you first the Medrash, and then we'll look at the psukim in Tehillim which it quotes, because the context of the pasuk is really beautiful. Avraham. This is in chapter 25, verse 7 of our Parsha. The pasuk tells us Avraham Avinu lived to be 175 years old when he passed away. Sarah Imenu was 127 when she passed away. Says the Medrash, Hashem knows the days of those who are whole. The days, the amount of time that a tzaddik is going to live, he looks at it, he understands it. He knows that this person is going to fill their life with so many good things, so much spirituality. They're going to make themselves holy to Hashem. They're going to make themselves great. And their portion, their inheritance is forever. Yodei Hashem Yimei Temimim, says the Medrash. What does it mean that Hashem knows the days of the Temimim, of the whole ones, the perfect ones? Ze Avraham Shenemar Vayeh Tamim. It's a reference to Avraham. Avraham, the pasuk says, Hashem says to him, you should go in my ways and be whole, be perfect, be spiritually great. So Hashem knows the days, knows the ways of those. I'd like to read to you from the Yisrael. He says, Hashem mabitu mashgiach bimei tzaddikim. God looks and he watches carefully over the days of the righteous. Not just generally speaking, but every single day. The pasuk is speaking about the fact that God is watching over the tzaddik in an extra way. When a person does the will of Hashem to the greatest extent that they can, the greater the person is, the more hashgacha pratis, the more divine providence that person experiences. The second half of the pasuk says that their inheritance will be forever. Pasuk says, these are the days of the years of Avraham, the life of Avraham. The Torah tells us, reveals to us exactly how many days, how many years he lived. So that we're going to see that there's going to be an aspect of the inheritance, which speaks about what they're going to receive, the reward they're going to receive in the world to come. That's going to be one aspect. But besides that, says the Medrash, the Torah wants us to know that this person lived a full life. Avraham Avinu, Sarah Imenu, they lived full spiritual lives. We see descriptions of the kindness of Avraham in last week's Parsha. We see how he takes care of his children to make sure that they follow in the spiritual path that they're meant to follow. This is a tzaddik. Zecher tzaddik livracha. Pasuk says that whenever we remember and mention a tzaddik, it's for blessing. And blessings, bracha, always has to do with something that's given over for us to access, for us to grow spiritually from. When we hear about a tzaddik, when we hear about the righteous individual and how his days were filled with goodness, it inspires us. I think I've mentioned, recently I'm reading again the biography of my Rebbe, the Menal of Yeshiva Far Rockaway, Rabbi Aaron Brafman. And just this past week, my Rebbe from 11th grade, Rabbi Kalish, Rabbi Yeshua Kalish, passed away. And in thinking about these great people and in going to a levaya, going and hearing the eulogies of a great person, it inspires me. When I read the biography of Rabbi Brafman, it inspired me to want to make sure that I'm more connected to great people. And it moved me to indeed search out such people and connect to them. And when I hear about Rabbi Kalish, who finished Shas 40 times in his lifetime, 40 times, learning 7 daf a day. When you hear about that, it inspires you. It makes you want to learn more. It makes you want to be a better person. And that's a nachla. That's an inheritance that we all have access to. That's the Medrash is telling us. Hashem acknowledges and knows the greatness of the righteous individuals and wants to bequeath that greatness to us. We need to look to those who are the great ones in our lives. Great ones the tzaddikim who we may never ever be on their level, but still their lives are an inspiration for us. And we can always take something into ourselves. We can always try to develop a midah. If the midah is incredible hasmada, diligence and continuous learning, we can all develop that in our own lives, on our own level. So midah is kindness, of chesed, of Avraham Avinu. It's an amazing thing. We always speak about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We talk about them every single day, 3 times a day in our tefillah. And we are reading the Torah over and over again every single year. We hear these stories all the time. And they're supposed to inspire us. These people are alive for us. They're still alive. That's the inheritance. So that's one aspect. But I'd like to read to you from the psukim, the context, in Tehillim Lamed Zayin, in chapter 37 of Tehillim. So the verse that we quoted, which speaks about Hashem knowing the days of the righteous and giving over an inheritance forever. So the psukim speak, as I mentioned before, they speak about a certain angst. The David chapter begins with saying that this is a Psalm of David. Al tischar b'mareim, al tekani b'osei avla. Don't compete with those who are doing evil. Don't try to be like them in any way. Ki kechatzir mehera yimalu chiyar desha yibalun. They're going to disappear quickly. They're just like, I would say, not exactly the words of the pasuk, but like a flower. It's very pretty right now, but it doesn't take very long before it withers and dies. B'tach b'Hashem aseh tov. Says King David, trust in Hashem and do good. Shchan eretz u're'ei emuna. Live in the world and be a shepherd of faith. Place your enjoyment. What do I want to enjoy in life? We choose what's our enjoyments in life. Some people enjoy sports. Some people enjoy movies. Some people enjoy a good novel. But David HaMelech says, what should be your enjoyment? It should be spiritual pursuits. It should be a daf Gemara. It should be a gishmak medrash. It should be a pasuk in Tehillim. These are the things that we should enjoy. And Hashem will give you all that you want. Right? The Rasha, the evil person, he tries to squeeze everything out of life through his pressure, through his efforts. But David HaMelech offers us a different way. He says, trust in Hashem. Focus on spirituality. That's the right way to go. Let Hashem be the one who guides you. Trust in Him. He's going to do it for you. And here the pasuk says, and we're not going to read the whole entire chapter here. We're just going to read a few more psukim, but we're going to skip over to our pasuk. But the pasuk says, God is going to bring out your righteousness, and you're going to see it as clear as the afternoon. Because there's a certain tension. There's a tension that exists when a person does good. When a person is pursuing spirituality, when a person is learning, when a person is sitting and learning, going to kollel, not involved per se in the day-to-day pursuits of all the people around them who are trying to earn a living. A person places his trust in Hashem. And he says, you know what, I'm going to be a spiritual person. I'm going to I'm going to believe that my spiritual pursuits will sustain me. But there's a tension because as you look around, it feels like, hey, all the people around me are doing something which seems to make more sense. They're involved in parnasa. They're involved in trying to earn a living. They're succeeding. They're making millions. They're whatever it is. It seems like, and I don't want to call those people wicked. They're not. They're regular people. But it seems like those who don't go in a spiritual path succeed. It seems like it works out for them. And those who go in the spiritual path, it seems to be much harder. Hey, I'm doing what's right. I'm raising my kids that the focus is Torah. That learning is important. That not just learning is important, but learning is the foundation of who we are, of the spirituality, of closeness to Hashem. It doesn't necessarily seem to work out. And that's the tension. That's the angst. But David HaMelech says, Void ma'ad ve'in rasha. I'm skipping a few psukim. Just wait a bit. You'll see that the wicked won't succeed. He's going to disappear. You'll take a look over at the place where he seemed to be, the success that he seemed to have, and it just is gone. And after a few more descriptions of how the righteous person succeeds in the end, and the wicked person eventually falls on his own sword, he says, Yodei Hashem yemei tamimim. He says our pasuk. Hashem knows the days of the whole ones, what's the tamim? What does it mean, go with God with simplicity? Be whole. The word tamim means whole, but it also means simple. We refer to a tamim as, in modern Hebrew, tamim means a person who's a little bit of a fool. He's not per se, worked out, doesn't have everything worked out in the ways of the world. The tamimei derech, those who are whole, those who are simple, it means that they don't make so much cheshbonos, they don't try to figure everything out. They put their trust in Hashem, they say, I'm going to do what's right. I don't know how it's going to work out per se, but I know it's going to work out. That's the B'teach. We've spoken about this many times in the Parsha Podcast. But the B'teach, the one who trusts, he's more simple. He says, I'm going to learn. It will take away from my time of work. I'm going to be simple with God. It's going to work out. I know it will. Yodei Hashem yemei tamimim. The pasuk is giving us a broad view. It's a bird's eye view, but it's Hashem's eye view, as it were. Hashem is saying, I know the days of those who are simple and whole, and go with me with simplicity. Don't try to figure everything out. There's a tension. If you don't look at things from a broader perspective, there's a tension. Hey, how's it going to work out? It looks like those who are thought out and worked out, it works out for them. They get rich. They figure out all the tricks of the business that you can find out about in Mishpacha magazine. But Ashrei, I'm saying there's Ashrei Tamimei Dorech. It's not this pasuk over here, but praiseworthy is the one who's simple. Hashem knows the ways of those who are simple. And ultimately, says Rashi, person might seem to succeed in this world by having figured out how to make it. But the one who really succeeds, the one who really makes it ultimately, it's not the one who's super focused on this world. It's the one who is super focused on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on God, and having a relationship with Him. And ultimately, the nachla, the reward, is going to be there for him. Now I'd like to read to you from the Hemshech of the Medrash, continuation of the Medrash, which speaks about this very idea. It says the pasuk, Oiz v'hadar levusha. We say this every week in Eishes Chayil. Oiz v'hadar levusha. Eishes Chayil is not just speaking about the wonderful wife, the woman, the woman of valor. It's speaking about us. It's speaking about the Jewish people, who we seem to be doing what's right, and we seem to have faith in Hashem, and we're returning to Eretz Yisrael. And it seems that all the all the cards are stacked against us. All the odds are against us. The tzaddik, who has the tension, not knowing what's going to be in the end. We're going to see about some tzaddikim who, at the end of their life, they didn't even know if they were going to have olam haba, if they're going to have a place in the world to come. But also hadar levusha, this Eishes Chayil, this tzaddik, Am Yisrael, is ensconced, dressed in power and in beauty. And the end of the pasuk says, she laughs on the last day, which means that ultimately there's a recognition at the end. And as we'll see, it's on the very last day. It really means what it says. When you get to the end and you see the whole picture, you look back and you see the entire story of one's life, of a tzaddik, of Am Yisrael, etc. So there's a laugh at the end. I was right. We were right. We were right. There's a sense of we were right. It says the Medrash, Kol matan scharan shel tzadikim metukon lahem le'ased lovei. All of the giving of the reward of the righteous is ready for them for the future. Umar lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu ad she'hem b'yom hazeh matan scharan shu ased li'tein lahem le'ased lovei. Says the Medrash a very interesting thing. Hashem shows the righteous individual his reward right before they pass away. The person is able to see exactly what it's going to look like for them in the world to come, as it were. They get the picture. They recognize at the end that it was all worth it. All the tension, it was worth it. Hashem shows them, I'm just reading the literal translation of the Medrash, Hashem shows them their reward that they're entitled to, that they're gonna gain in the future. And once their soul is satisfied, they go to sleep, as it were. They're ready to pass from this world. The Eitz Yosef says, Kasher lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu ligzar misal tzadikim. Shenemer yokar b'nei Hashem amav selach hasida. The pasuk tells us that it's very precious and very difficult for God. It's very heavy for Hashem to take away a tzaddik, a righteous individual. It's hard for Hashem to bring that person out of this world, to take them and bring misa, bring death upon them. So what does Hashem do? As Hashem, he doesn't want to do it. It's hard for him. Also, the righteous individual doesn't really want to die. He wants to accomplish more. He wants to finish Shas again. What does God do? The Medrash says in the Tanchuma that Hashem shows the righteous individual the reward that's waiting for them in the world to come. And then once the tzaddik sees that, he's like, okay, I'm ready to go. Harei Mavur says that it's Yosef. What we see from here, the purpose of showing them the reward is for them to request to pass on from this world. Right? The way that the Medrash ends off is saying that their soul is full. They feel satisfied. And out of that sense of satisfaction, they're ready to move on from this world. So, in trying to think about Avraham Avinu, trying to think about Sarah Imenu, the pasuk tells us they lived a very full life. Pasuk says that when Sarah Imenu was 100, it was like when she was 20. When she was 20, it was like that she was 7. It really, what it's saying, and interestingly, the Marzu says that about Avraham Avinu as well. It says he was 175. He was 175. So the Marzu says when he was 100, it was like he was 70. When he was 70, it was like he was 5. There was a certain fullness in his life that never went away. Throughout his entire lifetime, there was a fullness. Sarah Imenu as well. Throughout her lifetime, there was a fullness of their life. And at the end of their life, the Torah is giving us the perspective, kind of a post view. And, what's the epilogue here? we see that their lives were full. And there's a sense of completion that they experience. Amor Belazar, Mashal Suda Sha'asa Isa Melech. Rabbi Elazar says this is comparable to a suda, a meal that a particular king made. He made a grand feast. V'zimin archim. He invites his guests. Before he lets everyone into the feast, he gives them a view. They can see from above the whole feast. Get ready for this feast. They're looking down at the wedding hall, at the party hall, and they're seeing their mouths are watering. And they see what they're going to be able to eat and drink. And they feel just from the spectacle of it, they feel a fullness, and they go to sleep. Pasuk says, or the Medrash says, brings a proof from it from the Pasuk, that once they see and they have a sense of satisfaction, that's when they go to sleep. As a person is about to pass away, they see this reward, as we said. Now it brings a story. The Medrash tells us, and there's a Gemara, we'll see if there's time to see it inside as well, but when Rabbi Avo was about to pass away, he was a great sage of the Gemara, of the Talmud, Rabbi Avo was shown in a vision, the way the Gemara says it in Tainus, in regards to a different Amora as well, was that he fell asleep, and he saw this vision in his sleep. It was a prophetic type of dream, and he saw 13 rivers of oil, a persimmon oil, which is a very beautiful smelling oil. And as the Meforshim explained over in the Gemara in Tainus, on Daf Chafei, that this oil, he was going to frolic in the oil. It was a mashal for an incredible experience of spirituality, right? Let's think about oil. Oil represents shemen, is from the same root as the word shmaina, which means 8, and the 8th aspect is the spiritual aspect. Oil rises to the top when you put it into water, right? So he is going to enjoy the results, this incredible perfume, this oil perfume, that he has been spiritual all of his life. He's going to frolic in 13, and 13, before Hashem say here, 13 is the Lashon Guzma, which means a large number, but also the number 13 is the gematria of the word ahava, of love, echad, oneness. He's going to enjoy the oneness with Hashem, the love of Hashem, which he sought all of his life. The Medrash says that when Rabbi Avo saw this vision of the reward that's awaiting him, this incredible spiritual delight, he said, whose reward is this? And they said to him, this is your reward. Because he was concerned, as the Meforshim explained, Rabbi Avo had spent his life teaching Torah. He had spent his life learning Torah, but he wasn't completely involved in other mitzvahs, in other commandments. He was completely focused on the intellectual, spiritual side of life. So he was concerned that maybe he was missing something in other areas. So he was concerned that perhaps when he gets to Olam Haba, he wouldn't have such a great reward. But they showed him this incredible reward, which again is a mashal. It's a spiritual idea. And he said, whose is it? He didn't know that it was for him, and they told him it is for him. Amar Elaine Davo, he said, really, this is really my reward. He was heartened. He was worried before. There's the angst. There's the tension that the tzaddik is worried. Maybe it's not going to work out for me in the end. We don't really know. It's hard to tell in this world. If being spiritual is going to really work out, is it going to really work out? And he was shown this. He says, I was concerned and I was worried that maybe I was working for nothing. Maybe I won't. Maybe I spent all of my efforts on something that's not really significant. It's very interesting. It's possible, I would say even easy to make a mistake and think that, hey, I'm not gonna have this reward. It's not gonna work out for me in the end. But the pasuk ends off. The pasuk in Yishai, Perek Mem Tes, pasuk Daled, Achem mishpati es Hashem. I place myself in the hands of Hashem as far as judgment. I want Hashem to judge me. Hashem knows that I was trying to be spiritual. Hashem knows that I was trying to do my best to fill my life with good things, with spiritual things, with closeness to Him, with spiritual values. I'm not going to continue reading in the Medrash. The Medrash goes on to speak about this as well, and I don't have time to really read the Gemara in Tainus, which speaks about a similar story where Amora saw these 13 rivers of persimmon oil. But what I take out of this Medrash and what I want to bring home and offer you to think about is that we all live in this world and we all live with this tension. And the tension is what we're doing when we're trying to be spiritual. We're trying to, kind of veer away from all of the physical aspects, all of the over-involvement in the physical. In Rabbi Brafman's, in the book about Rabbi Brafman, in his biography, it speaks about the fact that he was so concerned about the over-involvement of B'nai Torah in Gashmias, too much physicality, too many cars, too much concern with a nice house. It's fine. A person needs to have a house. A person needs to have a car, or if you're in a place that needs it. A person needs to have the basics and the essentials, but where does it pass essential and become moisarais, become too much? Just heard on a recording from Rabbi Peretz, Zichrono Livracha, he talked about a bacher who just got engaged and he wants a different gold watch than the one his father-in-law is buying him. He wants a watch which is $1,000 more expensive. And Rabbi Peretz said to the father, let him pay for it. He doesn't have the money. What kind of expectations do we have for things that aren't essential? What kind of expectations do our children have? Have we properly given over to our kids? Have we been an example of people who don't need beyond the essential, don't need beyond the basics? Avraham and Sarah, they spent their lives focused on kindness, on bringing people closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on creating a family which would follow in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's who they were. That's their legacy. The tzaddikim around us, we know we've got them, they're everywhere. Some are greater than others. Some have books written about them. Some don't. But when we look at them and we see their values, and we see that ultimately it works out for them. Rabbi Abahu didn't know. Is this the right, is it really true? And there was that tension. We all have that tension. What's the answer? The answer is HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us an inheritance. Hashem shows the person, and we have to look for it. That's really what it means. We have to look for the fact that those who pursue spirituality, make that the main focus of their lives. Ultimately, really, those are the ones who see in their own children the greatest nachas. There's a continuation of that in the kids. There's a continuation of that in the generations that follow. And what greater inheritance is there than that? And it's certainly representative of the inheritance that a person has waiting for them in the world to come. So I want to bless you, and I ask you to bless me, that we should be able indeed to live a life like this, such that ultimately we will be able to see that reward both in this world and in the world to come. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.